Democratic Alliance says it believes there's nothing untoward regarding the request to extend the deadline of the work that's being done by the independent panel investigating the Phala Phala theft saga. Now, the party's parliamentary chief whip, Siviwe Gwagube, says the National Assembly must table the report as soon as it's finalized. Now, the Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, extended the three-member team's deadline at the request of the chairperson. Now, the panel is tasked with investigating whether there are grounds to impeach President Cyril Ramaphosa for his role in the 2020 robbery at his Limpopo farm. It's now expected to submit its findings on around the 30th of November.
The panel, you remember, we fought very hard to make sure that this panel is an independent panel in earnest. And we managed to get one of the people who were considered for the panel removed. We still have faith in the panel's independence, and so I think it would be premature to suspect that a mere request of an extension of the work is somehow sinister. But it's now going to hinge on the Speaker on how she then conducts the business of Parliament in the morning at that on that programming committee. Because if she starts to steer the conversation away from saying urgency as per is the requirement of the rules, then we can start to say, well, now we are doubting the Speaker's independence and objectivity.
All right, let's get more detail now on this story, or perhaps reaction. And we speak to ActionSA's provincial chairperson in the Eastern Cape, that's Athol Trollip. And Mr. Trollip, thank you very much for your time. We also are awaiting Dennis Bloom to also join us. The two of you are former members of Parliament, and so the understanding is that you would have extensive experience as to how parliamentary processes work. So let's start with that programming committee that is going to sit today. The DA says it's likely to push strongly for Parliament to not go on recess on the 1st of December as is anticipated, and instead work on this report so that it is debated and finalized. Do you think that's going to win the day there?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I think what we are discussing here is the Phala Phala matter and the investigation by the three-man team led by Judge Sandile Ngobo. But, I would like us to think back to what happened during the Zuma presidency, where the ANC blocked a vote of impeachment against President Zuma for the Nkandla matter. And the ANC was also very reticent to even introduce an investigation into the Nkandla matter. And we saw the ANC ministers, one after the other, defending it. And I'll never forget Nathi Nhleko mopping his brow with his handkerchief, telling us that the swimming pool that was built at Nkandla was actually a fire pool. So that's the history of ANC presidents being faced with impeachment. We've now got the next president who defined the 9 years of Jacob Zuma as 9 wasted years, and he's been the president for 5 years, and I believe that they've been equally wasted, and we've seen no real difference, especially no combating of corruption. And I believe that this Phala Phala matter has much more intrigue even than the Nkandla scandal, because it involves so much more than simply abusing taxpayers' money. So let's look at some of these things that place Cyril Ramaphosa on the horns of a dilemma. The horns of the dilemma are because he had an undisclosed number of dollars stolen from his farm. These dollars were apparently or allegedly stitched into some furniture and a couch on his property. And the questions arise is, why was he in possession of all these dollars? Why were they stitched away in a couch? Why were they not disclosed? There is a whole lot of legislation related to foreign currency and exchange regulations. Was it declared for taxation purposes, etc.? Those are the questions that Judge Ngobo will have to consider and investigate. But the other issues around the intrigue is the SSA's involvement and the charges laid by a very tainted Arthur Fraser and the involvement of Major General Wally Roeder, who apparently pursued the thieves across international boundaries or borders, and there were allegations of torture, and there are even allegations of buying off these thieves for their silence. So these are the matters of great intrigue that need to be answered. And my question is, why has it taken Cyril Ramaphosa so long? He only met the deadline for submission on the very last day to this three-person panel. And now they say they can't complete their work on time and they're seeking an extension. And I agree with Siviwe Gwarube from the Democratic Alliance that this process must be done properly and thoroughly, and it's very technical. But essentially what is going to happen with this extension is that the extension now falls due on the 30th of November, and Parliament goes into recess on the 30th of November, and Parliament goes into recess on the 1st of December, which means that there will be no consideration of whether there should be an impeachment process or not after the finding of the three-person panel. And that would appear to be giving Cyril Ramaphosa some protection at the 55th ANC elective conference. Now, that may or may not be the case, but it certainly smells and politically defensive. And these are the concerns that we as ActionSA have. And we would like to tell the public that no matter what happens with this Phala Phala issue, is that ActionSA will not let it go until it has been thoroughly investigated and that all the necessary prosecutorial processes are followed.
You inadvertently lead us to talk about the Speaker. She's a member of the ANC, a member of the National Executive Committee, but as Speaker of Parliament, she is supposed to be neutral on issues. Hopefully, she can be. First of all, the extension she has granted, the rules make it clear. I was reading the comments by her spokesperson this morning, and that is that, yes, the Section H9 process does not allow for an extension, but she has gone to invoke Rule 6, which talks about unforeseen circumstances. Is her behavior suspect?
Well, as I said, I've just got to hark back to the days of the Zuma presidency and look at how the former Speaker and the ANC behaved during those impeachment processes against Jacob Zuma, to make me very cautious and to believe that once again we're seeing an ANC Speaker being less than impartial. And there might be a very, very good reason for the extension, but simply saying unforeseen circumstances simply does not hold water as far as we're concerned as ActionSA. If there's going to be an extension, there needs to be a proper reason given, an acceptable reason. And then, of course, there's the other matter that has been considered, that the parliamentary program not close on the 1st of December to allow the relevant committee to look at the report that has to be tabled on the 30th of November. And if that happens, then it might sweep away the concerns that we have that there might be a cover-up or protection for Cyril Ramaphosa. If the parliamentary process is then stalled because the parliament goes into recess and the Speaker won't hear or entertain an extension of the parliamentary process, then we have to believe that there's an element of protectionism here.
Yeah. There are three arms of government, Mr. Trollip, and I don't need to explain that to you. You know that very well. There's the executive that's led by the President, Ramaphosa. There is the legislature, that's Parliament. Then there's the judiciary, that's led by the Chief Justice. Why am I saying this to you? The Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, his reports, state capture reports, that were given to the presidency, those were publicized immediately. They were placed on the website for all to see. Would that at least go some distance if the Speaker is to say, for example, no, we can't reverse the recess. Recess has got to take place on the 1st. The best I can do is simply publicize this report as soon as it is handed over to me by the parliamentary, by the panel that's investigating this. Is that at least likely to appease the public?
No, it certainly won't appease the public, and it won't appease opposition political parties, because the Zondo Commission, as you well know, also was delayed by a number of years, and the budget was far exceeded. for a whole host of reasons, many of them unforeseen reasons. But that was an inquiry. That was a public inquiry, and you can publish inquiry findings as they were done when they were finally tabled. But the three-person panel chaired by Judge Sandile Ngobo is a parliamentary process, and it's not a public process. Therefore, that report must be tabled in Parliament and must be considered by parliamentary committees before the outcome is then publicized. So you cannot put the cart before the horse. You cannot publicize the findings of that panel without it being referred back to a relevant parliamentary panel. So, the third arm that you didn't speak about is the judiciary. And there are judicial processes that also prohibit simply printing reports without them being considered by the relevant courts of law. So I'm very pleased that you pointed out that there are three separate spheres of government, but this is a parliamentary process and it will require parliamentary consideration. And we believe, ActionSA, that be done as soon as the report is tabled. And there's no big problem in retaining a parliamentary committee in Parliament to consider that report and to do its work before the end of the year. There's absolutely no reason why that can't happen. And if it does happen, that the Speaker says she will postpone the parliamentary committee doing its work until the new year, then one must come to the conclusion that there is an element of protectionism which ratchets up the suspicion, the public suspicion, and also the suspicion of political parties that are in opposition to the ANC that has been so notoriously bad at, preventing corruption. Let me give you my perspective about Phala Phala as well, which is a matter of grave concern for me. We read every day about the ANC not being able to pay its staff, and these are party loyalists that work for the party on a daily basis. But my personal experience and the public experience is that there always appears to be dirty money available in the boot of a car or stitched into a sofa for nefarious political activities, such as buying off councillors to vote against their own political parties in order to get their hands back onto the levers of power. I experienced that in Nelson Mandela Bay, and years later, the people that were responsible for voting out the coalition government at the time when I was the mayor have now been implicated and are being prosecuted for taking money from the ANC. So isn't it curious that there's never money available to pay for your staff, but there's always money available for nefarious activities? And the president will have to explain why he was in possession of so many dollars when the purchases of wild animals, game, or livestock can be done and should be done with electronic financial transactions, EFTs. That's the way purchases are done of livestock and at auctions nowadays. Why was he paid in dollars, and why were the dollars not disclosed? And what were the dollars meant to be used for once they were stitched into a couch? These are the questions that Judge Sandile Ngobo and his team will have to get answers to.
You lead me to my final question, and that is the party that pursued this relentlessly in order for this panel to now come into existence. That's the African Transformation Movement. I spoke to its president yesterday, who said that given the amount of information that this panel has at its disposal, there is no way, there simply is no way in their view that that panel will not find that the president has something to answer for. And if it does find in that way, they are ready to pursue the next level, which would possibly mean going to court. Do you share that view as ActionSA that the president will not escape unscathed here?
Look, first of all, I think the president has got some very heavy questions to answer, and he is going to have difficulty explaining some of the stuff around foreign currency, exchange regulations, taxation regulations, etc. It's going to be very, very difficult to explain it. But as far as the ATM is concerned and their president, Mr. Zungula, are concerned, it is very clear that they are also pursuing this matter with a political objective in mind, a party political objective in mind, and also their very close relation that they have or appear to have with the RET faction of the ANC. Now, ActionSA are going to be very clear on this matter. We want this matter to be dealt with objectively, and we will give everybody the benefit of the doubt to deal with this matter objectively. And so at any stage we feel that due process is not being followed and that objectivity is not prevailing, we certainly will pursue this matter until the very end through whichever means are required to make sure that there is an appropriate response to these open-ended. The President on the horns of this dilemma.
Athol Trollip, let me thank you very much for your time talking to us at Takastad. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
All right, that's Athol Trollip, and he is the provincial chairperson of the Eastern Cape ActionSA leadership. All right, we were hoping to be joined by Dennis Bloom from Cope. Unfortunately, he could not make it. All right.